Kia ora, ko dia ho, haramai, welcome to Homemade Let's Cook. Today we're making hundreds and thousands biscuits and we are going to sandwich them together with some raspberry jam, which is just going to be fantastic. Today's recipe we're using from Kiwi Country Girl and we're going to halve the recipe if you've seen that online at all. So we're going to use a cup of plain flour. We've got about 62.5 grams of butter, and we are using butter today. We've got just under half a cup of white sugar. We've got half an egg. So what I've done there is I've whisked the egg, I've weighed it, and then I've taken half of it out and just used the measurement to make sure I've just got half an egg. We need a little bit of baking powder, a little bit of salt, some vanilla essence, and then for our toppings we need some icing sugar, some food colouring, sprinkles of course, and we also need some raspberry jam just to sandwich them together. Okay, let's make a start. The first thing we're going to do today is cream our butter and sugar. So the full recipe is 125 grams of butter, so we're using approximately 62.5 grams. Doesn't matter if it's not exact. So we'll just pop that in our bowl there. So remember, creaming is just combining until light and fluffy. We might not get to the fluffy bit, but that's okay. So then we've got half of 3/4 of a cup of white sugar. So for us it's about just under half a cup. So we'll cream that together. So if you've got butter, and given it's quite warm, if that's actually out in the out of the fridge, then that will probably end up being a really nice consistency for creaming. So you'll see that's already come together, and we'll just give that a bit of a beat. Now you could always do this in a mixer as well, just to save you the trouble. Okay, so to that we're going to add our half an egg. So remember, weigh your egg, and when it's whole, whisk it, and then take it out until it's half of what you measured. The whole recipe, of course, catches for a whole. So wet ingredients and then dry. A little bit of vanilla. Always got to have vanilla on hand when we're doing any baking. Pretty much in everything. Looks like that. So that's a nice consistency. Then we're going to add our flour. So we've got plain flour, but of course to that we're adding 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So that's not a lot. We're actually going to sift that today. And slowly bring it together. Now that hasn't taken very long to come together at all. So we're just going to turn it out onto a floured surface. Shape it into a ball. Round in your hands a little bit. It's looking beautiful. I'm going to take some cling wrap, enough to cover the ball, which we're actually about to flatten. So put the dough onto there, wrap it up like a present, flatten it out, and then that is going into the fridge for around 30 minutes. And then we'll see you again. Welcome back. Our 30 minutes is gone. We've allowed 10 to 15 minutes for the pastry just to soften up out of the fridge. We've got our cookie cutters ready, and we've got a little bit of flour on our surface. And we're going to start rolling it out. Now, just to make things a little bit easier, I'm going to divide this in half already. And we'll just do half at a time. It might be a little bit crumbly, don't worry about that. Just gently roll it out. The thickness needs to be about 3 to 4 millimeters. You can also, if you want to, roll it out onto a piece of baking paper and cut it out that way. So that's about right. So I've got two size cutters here. I've got a smaller one and a larger one. Obviously, when you're making sandwich biscuits, you want even numbers of both. Have your tray ready to go? So keep going until your tray is filled up. You could put 2 trays in your oven at the same time, depending on how big your oven is. So now they're ready for the oven, about 8 to 10 minutes or 10 to 12 minutes, just depending. Keep an eye on them. These are now out of the oven. They're lightly golden. We're going to keep them on the trays for 10 minutes and then transfer them to a wire rack for a further 15, just to make sure they're completely cooled down. Now's the fun part, is putting it all together. So first of all, we need to make the icing. So I've just got a little over half a cup of icing sugar in here. If that's not enough, you can always make more. I've got a small piece of butter that I'm going to add to that as well. And then I've got a little bit of milk and a little bit of hot water. So we don't want to add too much because we don't want it to be runny. And of course, if it does end up too runny, we just add some more icing sugar. You want a nice spreading consistency. Place a plate under your wire rack that has half of the biscuits, and we'll put the icing on top of these ones. And if you've got someone to help, they can start putting the sprinkles on. Take a raspberry jam and put a generous amount on the base biscuit. finished with the jam, it's time to sandwich them together. They're also suitable for the freezer.